Good afternoon, good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us. I'm Atousa Raissyan with my co-host, Hollis, and we are here. I'm trying to revive the podcast I started a while ago, right around COVID time, which I called it Goodbye Bullshit, Hello Happiness. And what these podcasts, these shows were supposed to be about is for us to get rid of the rules around us, the shoulds, I have to, I need to, I must, and live a more heart-centered life. So I'm so excited and happy to be working with Hollis. I magically happened to meet her. She magically came on one of my Facebook posts. It wasn't even an ad, so I don't know how she showed up on there. And she asked a very simple but complicated question of what does creativity mean to you? And that just drew me to that. I'm like, let me go find out who is this person. And I was lucky enough to find her and be part of her multi-author book that's actually going to be coming out soon here. We're excited. It's I think Friday, right? This
Friday,
Friday.
September 17th.
Friday, September 17th. So I'm going to be quiet now and I'm going to let her talk, and we're just going to casually do this. And this is supposed to be, going to try to do it every Tuesday around the same time. And it's going to be live on Facebook, LinkedIn, and YouTube. And we'll later post it on Instagram as well. I'm happy if you guys are going to join us live, pop in, say hi, write a comment. And with that, I'm going to hand it over to my co-host for her to tell you all about what she does.
So thank you, Atousa. I am so happy that I met you, truly. Heart-centered, so happy that I met you. This is just such a beautiful person. So I am, who am I? So when you go with titles kind of thing, been an art teacher for profession for almost 30 years, which is crazy. But teaching in lots of different settings, traditional, non-traditional. Non-traditional meaning from homeless shelters to artisan residencies, having my own businesses, to more traditional being private public schools system. And left the school system 3 years ago. I was like, I got to work with adults and this whole adulting thing and this whole how we get ourselves so stuck in our routines and our roles. And well, I have to pay the mortgage and I have to pay the rent and I have to do this and I have to do that. So I have no time for joy, no time for happiness, because that's like a side thing. It's not actually incorporated into life. So I do it in many different ways. But one of the ways, which I'm so grateful that we met, was through the publishing house and the multi-author book and people getting a chance to share their story. So I guess, maybe it's just kind of coming to me, this whole topic of happiness. Like, what is happiness really?
I love that. I love that. And I think everybody defines it differently. I know a lot of people have asked me, like, well, you do this work. Does that mean that you found happiness and you're happy all the time? Um, I am happy all the time, but doesn't mean life around me is perfect or there are not things that come and go out of my life. Is that my view of everything has changed and I take everything with a different perspective, and the joy and the peace is always inside, even in whatever is happening in front of me, because I have that knowledge that everything is happening for a purpose, everything has a reason. That's why I bring that happiness from the inside into whatever is going on in my life. So life still goes on, life still has its ups and downs, and we just do our best to go through with it. And like I said, getting rid of all those rules and regulations, like you mentioned, all these titles we have, all these responsibilities that we think we have to be a certain way for our role as a mom, our role as a wife or a friend or a teacher. And we get stuck in there, and it's hard to get unstuck and live a heart-centered life.
Yeah.
So
I think it's so important what you said though about that whole internal. Like you found that whole thing of, well, most people would say, well, it's not possible to be happy all the time. Like life happens. There are
mhm.
bad things, there are like okay things, they're like how can you actually stay in that state of happiness? And I like how you worded that it's on the that it's internal. And what I've been learning as I've in this whole aging process and want people to learn at a younger age is that it really is all within. And that kind of it alters if you react or respond, how you react or how you respond.
It that reminds me. I love little stories of magic. I try to share with my clients and people to just see how things are flowing, and you don't need to stress about everything. I believe it was during COVID. COVID is all a blur. I forget the year, but anyway, sometimes last year, I think we were still during COVID. So we had a storm here, and a quarter of my roof blew off. The shingles blew off. So it literally was nothing there. I mean, like there was under the shingles, that material was there. Shingles were all gone. So obviously, right away, I called different roofing companies. They came, and one of them, I always pick and choose like what feels good to me in this moment from these people with these choices. What feels good to me, and the company I picked at that time felt good, felt right. So, and they said they were going to work with my insurance company and also with the insurance company. All things were saying that it didn't make sense to me, but they were saying, no, these are our rules. Like, okay, fine. And then this company said, I'm willing to work with them. We always work with insurance companies, because the insurance said they were going to only pay to fix that portion of it and not the whole roof. I'm like, well, the whole roof, the shingles coming off everywhere. It's an old roof. We need to do everything. And they were like, no, no, we're not going to do it. We're only paying for this portion. And these guys said, we'll always get the money from them. We'll work with them. I said, fine. So a month goes by. Now I have a tarp over that area. I've put a big tarp, and rain and everything is coming. After a month going back and forth, and they kept telling me, oh yes, we're working with these guys, working with these guys. Finally, after a month, I called my insurance company and said, okay, what's the holdup? They keep telling me they're working with the insurance company's like, I have no idea. We told them day one that this is all we're willing to pay for. So after a month, I go back to them. I said, listen, guys, really like you, good personality, but you were not honest with me. So I'm getting rid of you guys. Then the next company, I was going through other companies, and another part, a little tree I had in the back, that fell. And the tree guy that I knew for 20 years, he came over and we were talking. He's like, what happened? And I explained. He's like, oh, my son works with his friend in Ohio. They do roofing, but the friend has just moved into the area. I recommend him, and he really needs the job. I said, great, send him over. And it just clicked. He was great. The price was right. And all those issues, even with my insurance company, it all went away magically. So, and during this whole process, I'm telling you, we were going into winter. Literally, I just had a tarp on there. And I didn't stress. I kept saying, it's happening for a reason. I don't know what this is, but I know this is happening for the reason. And it was delayed for the job to go to this particular person. He came because he had just moved in with his family, with his two kids, and he could really use the job. And what we did is after that, he got two more other people from my neighbors and friends that
Wow.
signed up. And that was the whole purpose of that. Now, had I like stressed and was upset and to be honest, during that whole time with the snow and rain, no leaks at all, just with a tarp over my roof. I was like, for sure, I'm gonna have leaks.
Oh my
Nothing.
God. But it's the mindset. It's so much of the, because if you come at something, because there are real reasons to get upset about things. You know, if you, so if you come at it with the energy that's like, oh my God, what am I going to do? That nervousness, then like you're saying, it blocks other areas and it wouldn't allow for the flow of you having the conversation with the person, with the tree person who then recommended this person. It's like we don't always know the how.
Mm-hmm.
It often presents. You're making also, when you told that story, it made me think of somebody that I know who is in New Orleans, and with what happened there with everything, they had an extensive damage and all of this. And it's just interesting because she'll post when she can, when she's in, can get Wi-Fi, and she's saying that she's taking care of herself, she's still exercising while dealing with everything she has to do. And she's like, people kind of look at her like she's crazy, almost like, why are you exercising? Why are you, don't you realize that you have to take care of all this? And she's thinking, this is why I have to do this, because it's what keeps me, it's my routine, it's my mindset, it's what I do to nurture myself in order to stay in this space of calm.
Mm-hmm.
And
Flow is very important. You said the right word, the magic word, flow. Going with the flow of things and not resisting it, not fighting it. That flow, it's so important because it really allows the energy of everything to come and go and move freely. And that way you get to really see and feel, okay, this is right for me and what's not, and allowing it to come, flow in and out of your life. So I love that. Yeah, that was the magic word, flow.
well, you think of that image of, you know, what Abraham Hicks talks about, upstream and
Mm-hmm.
downstream. So here you are going against something, going upstream, and it's just like you can feel it. It's like trudging. It's a battle. You're getting pushed back. You're like, it's a very physical feeling of it.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas when you're going with the stream, it's easy. You don't have to fight anything. Um, so yeah, it's maintaining or trying to be in that downstream more instead of
Yeah.
fighting so much.
Yeah, yeah. I there's a lot of magical stories I think out there, and hopefully through this show we'll get to bring more of those people around to talk about how they let the flow into their life because everything we sometimes can't see the big picture, and that's why we get stuck in certain areas and we grab hold and we try to um, sort of force things into a certain way, and that grabbing and holding on and forcing makes things much harder and makes it even harder for you to even get a glimpse of big picture. And the flow actually, I was one of my clients recently, I was talking to her about it too, is that when you are only willing to also, you've narrowed your focus into what's right in front of you and how things should be, it narrows the way you receive things as well, because it's like you've narrowed your channel, narrowed how things can flow to you only in this specific way. But when you're opening yourself up to allow that flow and allowing it to flow in any way and taking out the rules that you've set, those rules that it has to come this way, it needs to come this way, it should come this way, then you're blocking your own flow of things and you're not able to see it. One of the funny things people always say, like, well, I don't get any messages. I'm like, well, where are you looking for messages? And they say, well, messages aren't they supposed to come like in this way? So they have a particular set. I said, well, if you're looking only in that window and missing the door and the window over there, obviously it's going to be much more difficult to give you the message. You got to open it up to, hey, any way, any shape, any form it comes to me, I'm willing to receive it. And that's true about everything. That's true about money, abundance, things you want in your life, opening up to more channels.
Oh my gosh, I love that. Yeah, it's true. It's that when you said words like rules and should and that narrowness, I'm thinking yes, 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 because we get, and it's very logical because it's kind of like, okay, well, if this is supposed to happen, then this happens next, and this happens next. Um, and in certain ways, it's kind of like, I don't know if this is going to make sense, but it's kind of like we have to create. There's a sense of order. We like structure. A lot of
Mm-hmm.
people like structure, so it makes sense because it gives a sense of comfort. But there's also that balance of being open to saying, okay, well, there's the structure. I know that this is, I'm creating this space. While creating this space, I'm more open than thinking that this is the only way that it can be. This is the how. It kind of goes back to that knowing the how, because we don't often know. It comes in those least expected places for things to happen.
Exactly.
I didn't know that I was going to start a publishing house, and I had no idea, but it was like a natural progression from everything that I was doing, from the experiential kits to the teaching to the podcast to the it's to this. It's just like a natural flow for people to speak their stories, but in this case it's writing their stories. So the podcast is like the verbal, and
Mm-hmm.
this is, it's just another way. And I didn't know, but it feels completely natural.
Yeah.
Even though I don't know, even though there's things I'm learning all the time, it's, one could perceive it as, oh my god, this is such a challenge, like I suck, or any of these things. But that's when you kind of ask for help. That's when you go to the people, you have a support system in place, and that's when you pull. I believe that everything does kind of build on itself. So taking from all the experiences of all the people that I've worked with over the years in all these different teaching scenarios, and learning about people's different personalities and how to communicate with people and all this, these are all skills learned along the way in order to get to this next step. And yeah, I don't know if that made sense, but
It did. It did. And actually, again, it keeps taking me back to what you said earlier, the flow. When you're in that flow, and even as you're learning everything else that you need, it's coming in that stream for you. Earlier I was letting you know, I've been trying to do these live shows, these conversations, these around the table talks that hopefully will get to bring more people here and talk to. I've been trying to do it for maybe over a year. I've been talking about it. It just wasn't coming together. And in the past, what, few weeks, I met you, we did the book, we had some lives, and like, hey, you want to do this together? It's like, yeah, let's do this together. And okay, let me go online, and it was just like this. It came so easily. So it need the timing of it. That's the other thing that I think a lot of times people miss, is that when the time is right, that flow will bring everything to you. So just allowing that to happen, and you keep doing what feels good to you and moving in that flow and not resisting it, will bring it all together. I think you've heard the story I've said about my art. When I started my artwork, I just started because it was making me feel good. I had no clue where it was going to take me to. And as I was doing more of the work, it went into digital. And even in my digital art, I was imagining these things as like, I wish I could do this with it. I wish I could do that with it. And suddenly there, like, some of the apps that I found out was like a year or 2 years after I had started my work. Some recently, the apps have been developed. Even when I started, they weren't there. So that flow and timing, and when it works, everything comes together and it just flows easy, naturally, rather than me having to, like, oh, it needs to happen this way, it has to happen now. But that flow brings everything together.
Well, and I think too, when you were kind of explaining that, I was kind of hearing the word expectation,
Mm,
because you said you were kind of just doing it because it was making you feel better. You weren't doing it because somebody asked you to do it. You weren't doing it because there was a timeline that you were creating it for a client and they were like, well, I want it to look like this and I need it in 2 weeks or whatever. You were doing it because it made you feel good. So because there wasn't an expectation, it was more fluid.
true, true. No expectation of timing, no expectation of how it's going to be, just with the feeling that it's good. But even I found out, even in the healing practice that I have, every time I try to put sort of business expectations on there, that it has to follow a certain business rule, it got stuck. It really, the flow wasn't there. It just would get stuck. And as soon as I would say, okay, you know what, I'm going back to what feels good in here. I'm not following the business rules. I'm not doing it because somebody told me. I'm just going to go with what feels good. Then things would flow again. Then I would get to a certain point. I'm like, well, maybe I should turn it into the business again. Let me do all the. It would get stuck again, and it just wouldn't work. It can't. And after like several attempts of me just getting stuck, I said, okay, I got my lesson. I know now. This only has to come from me and what feels good to me. And I don't. I just, whatever, if it feels good, like the book, I was telling you when we started, there were other opportunities. None of it felt good. It's just like, no, it doesn't feel right. And I talked to you for like first 5 minutes. I'm like, okay, where do I sign up? This feels good. This feels good. Let's do it. So, and I think people also get stuck in the fact that what feels good to me doesn't necessarily mean it has to feel good to the next person. So you gotta, whatever feels good to you, that was the important thing. You is the key here, not your neighbor, not the person across the street, not person Y that has the same business or the same work. It has to be good for you.
So what I'd like to kind of touch on with that though is, because I'm thinking that people will be like, well, that's narcissistic. Me, me, me. So having people understand that when you're starting from what feels good to me, it's coming from a place of expansion because you know what you want, you know what your why is, you know what your purpose is. So it's coming from that heart-centered space, being more focused instead of being so erratic. Because when we're thinking about people all of the time and what Joe Schmo is going to think, and well, maybe Sally Sue will like this, and maybe I should do it for this person, then you're just all over the place.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess for me, and I'd love to hear what you think, is that when you're coming from that place of how does it feel to me, like you're saying, it's coming from a place that's a lot more centered. So then you can reach the people that are ready to receive what you're offering. Because it's not going to be for everybody, and it doesn't have to be for everybody.
It is true. You actually, I love what you said, that what people imagine is like, well, you're being selfish, you're being narcissist if you're just thinking about yourself. It's not that I'm thinking about myself.
Mm-hmm.
I make my choices, I make my movements, I make my decisions based on my heart and what feels good in my heart. So it's the decisions that come from the mind, that's when they become selfish and they become sort of, we get into that narcissistic realm. But when I'm trying to move and flow from the heart, that's different. Also, that heart center means that I'm coming from a place of love.
Yeah.
And when I'm going from a place of self-love and just love in general, then whatever movement I make, it is from that heart place, it is from that love place. And that love gets actually sent out to the people that come and interact with me as well. Because if I'm moving from my heart, I'm not fighting with you. I want the same for you. That love that I'm moving with says, hey, I love what I'm doing. I want you to love from what you're doing as well. Let's all move from this place. So that's the difference, that it's not self-centered, it's not selfish, it's not narcissistic, because you're actually going from your center, your heart, which is a place of love.
There we go. We solved the world's issues.
There you go.
Hey, everybody.
Well, I think this is a good time to stop our first one. I am so looking forward to these conversations and see where it's going to take us. If you joined us live, or if you're going to watch this later on, we plan to do these every Tuesday, starting at 12 Eastern time for about 30 minutes. We're going to try to keep it to 30 minutes. And just come on, ask questions, let us know what you think, your opinions, and we're going to try to have some interesting guests as well to share their stories with us. Yeah. Hollis, anything you want to add before we say goodbye?
I'm just so excited. It's these soul conversations. So it's just these conversations. We want to hear from you. We want to hear your thoughts. There's no right or wrong. This is a space. It's a safe space to bring up these topics. So tell us what you want to talk about. Tell us what you want to expand on. And we would love to have these conversations because they seem so simple, but they're so deep. So yeah, I'm excited.
Beautifully said. Thank you all. And we'll see you next week. Bye, everybody.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.